In 1692, there were not one Salem, but two Salems. Salem Village, predominantly an agricultural backwater, which is today the town of Danvers. And Salem Town, a bustling, urbanized commercial port, which is now the city of Salem. There was an economic difference, a political difference, a physical difference, in short, a complete cultural difference.
Salem Village was dependent politically on Salem Town, and there was no real village government.
By 1692, there was a lot of resentment between Salem Town and Salem Village politically, and religiously they were completely separate.
This is the first Congregational Church of Danvers, founded in the 17th century. The witchcraft outbreak of 1692 began in the house of the Reverend Samuel Parris, the minister of the church.
When the daughter and niece of Samuel Parris first began to react in these bizarre ways, it really was not clear what was wrong with them. And the first thing that Parris did was to bring in a physician to examine the girls to see if there was any medical cause for their behavior. And it was the physician who suggested that it was perhaps bewitchment.
Who is doing this to you?
It's afflicting me, it's biting me.
Who is it that hurts you? Who is it that afflicts you? After 2 or 3 weeks of that kind of questioning, the afflicted girls succumbed to the suggestion of their elders and began to think about who might be hurting them.
She is in league with the devil.
They began to name names.
She has signed in the devil's book.
The first people who were actually cried out upon by the girls were basically either slaves or lower class individuals.
Witches were supposed to be angry women, resentful women, and so women who acted out in anger and in aggressive ways were vulnerable of witchcraft accusation.
Now it is I who am wrongly accused, but who will be next?
It kept escalating. The accusations went up the social ladder in towards the center of the Salem community. The kinds of people who are now at the center of Salem were people who were full-time merchants, who were seen by their neighbors as being in it just for themselves. If you were someone who was not doing so well, you might very well see these people as behaving wrong, as acting bad, as being associated with a different world. And in fact, things got so tense by 1692 that they became associated with the demonic subterranean order.
Stories that had been circulating and remembered from years past were then brought in as depositions against these people. It wasn't fresh evidence. It was old gossip that was being dredged up and brought into the courts.
By the end of the hysteria, well over 150 people had been accused and thrown into jail.
19 people were hanged, 14 women and 5 men. They were buried somewhere on the site.
Suddenly you start getting a lot of people confessing. The idea behind that was no one who ever confessed actually was executed.
Those who refused to confess and were brought to trial were the ones who were executed. The reason that not everyone would confess to witchcraft, even when that became apparent, is because to confess to the crime of witchcraft was to admit that one had committed the sin of becoming the devil's servant.
George Jacobs, when he was confronted and when he was being accused of practicing witchcraft, said to his tormentors, "Well, burn me or hang me, but I'll stand in the truth of Christ."
We have to consider the women and men who went to the gallows in 1692 as having a great deal of courage of standing up for their beliefs, for their faith, and not succumbing to the intimidation that caused others to confess.